Well, our next guest speaker is David Knight. David, for those of you who have been here for the last 2 days, is back there running the show. David has been a researcher on the President Kennedy's assassination since 1989, directly affiliated with Project JFK and CSI Dallas. He's been studying the assassination for over 30 years, has read more than 400 books, has traveled to the scene of the crime over 20 times, interviewed hundreds of key witnesses involved in it, with and around related to the assassination. Has produced 9 documentary films with Project CSI Dallas, produced 2 documentary films with William Matson Law entitled The Gathering for his book In the Eye of History, along with a DVD and Blu-ray version of the director's cut. He's a member of JFK Lancer and has been an audio-visual technician and producer of Lancer's National and International Conference, November in Dallas, since 2009. He's won numerous awards for his videography and film editing. David is lecturing on key factors concerning conspiracy and cover-up, believes that the current research needs to return to the beginning of the assassination and apply the newly released documents into this equation with new technology and a new fresh set of eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, David Knight. Hey.
Good afternoon, everybody. How we doing? As Brian said, I'm a member of Project JFK. My PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to bring to you today is kind of a 2.0, so to speak, of my presentation, A New Theory, New Weapon. But there's been new stuff added to it, more research, and it's a living, breathing thing, so it constantly changes. Things are added to it. Mostly nothing's actually never been taken away from it yet. As Casey said and Brian said, Project JFK CSI Dallas, if you have not been to our website, please visit it. You will find a plethora of information, videos. J. Gary Shaw's legacy collection is there. So is Larry Rivera's collection, some of his Blender images. But Gary has been very kind of giving us information to put on there, the things that you can't find anyplace else on the internet. So our presentation today is called Focus, Breathe, Engage, the targeted killing of President Kennedy. So where did my info come from? Books, videos, testimony, internet, documents, and my direct interviews. So let us begin. We will discuss the weapons that were known for a fact that were in Dealey Plaza on November 22nd, 1963. We will discuss the weapons in question that could have been in Dealey Plaza on 11/22/63. And we will discuss what I theorize is the type of weapon that could have been the cause of JFK's throat wound. We always hear researchers and presentations talk about the head wound, but the first wound that actually happened to President Kennedy that day was the throat wound. So let's look at the evidence of my theory. We clearly see JFK has been hit in the throat. Governor Connally shows no sign of being shot at Zapruder film 230. Now, I also want to state that there is 2 sides to the Zapruder film. Is it intact? Has it been spliced, adulterated? That's up for the individual researcher to make up their mind. And if we're looking at doing timing off of the Zapruder film, for those that think that the Zapruder film has been altered, then how do we actually go off of that timeline? So if it hasn't been altered, then we can use it as a timeline. If it has been, then it can throw the entire research off. So let's look at Alkin's photograph. James William Alkins took his 2 famous photographs on 11/22/63 while working on assignment for the AP. He was supposed to work in the office that day, but instead went to Dealey Plaza with his own camera and captured these 2 photos known as Alkin 6, which is on the left, and Alkin 7, it's on the right. This is a blow-up. Now we can see that President Kennedy is already showing that he's been shot in the throat. The hole in the crack in the windshield, which we heard talk about earlier. And here's a superimposed number 2 pencil This is not something you'll find in the National Archives. It's a photograph that I just happened to overlay it, and there's a reason for that. So let's discuss what eyewitnesses saw, heard, and testified about. Eyewitnesses say they saw the hole in the windshield and the size of the hole would fit a number 2 pencil. They also said it was a hole made from the outside going to the inside. Dr. Avila Glanges, but it was very clear. It was a through-and-through bullet hole, through the windshield of the car, from the front to the back. No way there's even any cracks associated with that bullet hole. It seemed like a high-velocity bullet that had penetrated from the front to the back in the glass pane. George Whitaker Sr. stated it was a good, clean bullet hole through the screen from the front right. This had a clean, round hole in the front and fragmentation coming out the back. These are statements from the movie The Men Who Killed Kennedy. Dallas Motorcycle Patrolman Stavis Ellis. There was a hole in the left front windshield. It was a hole. You could put a pencil through it. You could take a regular standard writing pencil and stick it right through there. Dallas Motorcycle Patrolman H.R. Freeman. I was right beside it. I could have touched it. It was a bullet hole. You could tell what it was. Secret Service Agent Charles Taylor, Jr. In addition, of particular note was a small hole just left of center in the windshield from which what appeared to be bullet fragments were removed. Statements from Best Evidence by David Lifton. So why shoot through the windshield? Perhaps the shooter was shooting over the windshield and didn't calculate the bullet drop correctly or how fast the car was moving for a frontal shot. Or maybe because they practiced that way, thinking that the bubble top would be installed on the limo. And once you practice a certain shot, that's kind of what you take. Eyewitnesses and ear witnesses have spoken and testified what they heard was not gunshots. They thought they heard firecrackers going off. Well, what kind of a gun or rifle sounds like a firecracker? I will answer this question with my theory later on. Okay, so firecracker. Yeah, it didn't sound very well, but that's okay. Sounded like a firecracker. Well, on these next slides, John hit the left mount, never mind. There's 50 ear witnesses, if there are ear witnesses. They're witnesses. They heard what they thought to be a firecracker. So what did the doctors at Parkland remember seeing concerning the wound in the throat of President Kennedy? And what did the doctors see of the wound at Bethesda Naval Hospital? At Parkland, they saw a perfect round hole, entry wound. At Bethesda, they saw a 3-inch gash, exit wound. The comparison, Parkland Hospital on the left in a drawing and the Warren Commission drawing of after the throat wound arrived at Bethesda. Well, let's talk about the back wound. Parkland doctors didn't see this wound, but during the autopsy, the wound in the back was found and probed. Doctors probed the wound and stated they could feel the end of the wound with their finger, so not a very deep wound. Surely not a through-and-through wound. The Warren Commission would have us believe that Oswald shot from an elevated 6th floor, shooting at a downward angle, shot JFK, and the wound turned upright in his body and entered his throat. And how do they explain this? With the magic bullet. We see HSCA JFK Exhibit F294. From the left to the right, CE 399, magic bullet. Then the CE 572, the bullet shot through cotton wadding. Next to that, CE 853, the goat carcass breaking one bone. And then CE 856, the wrist bone of a human cadaver. Not a single one of those four bullets look like the magic bullet. You know what I call this? It's bullshit. Okay, we're going to show some videos here. I'm going to have my assistant John change over the video here, or the microphone here in just a second, but these are from Dr. Malcolm Perry and Dr. Charles Crenshaw. When those finish up, I will read to you what Dr. Robert McClellan explained to me what he remembered.
At Parkland, Dr. Malcolm Perry, attending surgeon, tried desperately to keep the president alive, but the very urgency of that problem prevented him from examining the two wounds, as he now explains in his first public statement since the report was published.
I noted a wound when I came into the room, which was of the right posterior portion of the head. Of course, I did not examine it. Again, there was no time for cursory examinations, and if a patent airway could not be secured and the bleeding could not be controlled, it really made very little difference. Some things must take precedence and priority, and in this instance, the airway and the bleeding must be controlled initially.
What about this wound that you observed in the front of the president's neck? Would you tell me about that?
Yes, of course, it was a very cursory examination. The emergency proceedings at hand necessitated immediate action. There was not time to do more than an extremely light examination.
Did it occur to you at the time, or did you think, was this an entry wound or was this an exit wound?
Actually, I didn't really give it much thought, and I realized that perhaps it would have been better had I have done so. But I actually applied my energies, and those of us there all did, to the problem at hand, and I didn't really concern myself too much with how it happened or why. And for that reason, of course, I didn't think about cutting through the wound, which, of course, rendered it inviolate for as regards further examination and inspection. But it didn't even occur to me. I did what was expedient and what was necessary, and I didn't think much about it.
The nature of the throat wound can no longer be verified, for no records were made and no pictures taken before Dr. Perry cut through it in an attempt to relieve his patient's breathing. The doctors at Parkland were engaged in a desperate struggle to keep the president alive. All else was secondary. But their task was impossible. One of the shots had virtually destroyed the president's head. Even as the doctors worked, the president died. At the hospital, the scene was turbulent and disordered. The press and public were clamoring for news. Dr. Perry was rushed from the emergency room to a news conference where he was badgered into giving a description of the wounds. The neck wound, he told the press, looked like an entry wound, and he pointed to the front of his neck. In the transcript of that news conference, there's no doubt that Dr. Perry made it sound as if he had a firm opinion.
The second wound?
The second wound was here in the throat, right above the necktie. It was a small opening, very small, 3 to 5 millimeters, about the size of your little finger.
In a slow-motion study of the film, President Kennedy grabs his throat with both hands, reacting, Crenshaw believes, as if he is shot from the front. At first, most of the doctors working on the president believed the small neck wound they observed to be an entry wound from the front. Compounding the mystery is this photograph of the government's autopsy, showing a gaping wound in the president's neck. A tracheostomy incision was done at Parkland over the site of the bullet wound. Crenshaw says someone tampered with that wound after he last saw Kennedy's body, making it larger to resemble a bullet exit wound.
Look, this is the size of the tracheostomy tube. Incision was made and then placed in. This large part, this flange, stays outside.
So it was a small wound, about the size of the instrument that you
Right.
saw.
1 inch to 1.5 inches maximum. This wound, and described in the Warren Commission, was almost 3 inches wide.
Double the size.
Double.
Is it possible that the doctor working to put this in what may have been already a bullet wound made the incision too large?
Oh, no. No, Perry was an artist with a blade. He was one of the best trained technical surgeons.
Dr. Robert McClellan. I've had the pleasure of knowing Dr. McClellan for the last, well, at this time I made this slide, it was 10 years, but Dr. Robert McClellan has passed away. I've seen him in lecture, and I've recorded him in lecture, and I've spoken with him at great length. He was very adamant since 1963 about what he witnessed inside Trauma Room 1 at Parkland Hospital, Dallas, Texas. He states that he saw the back of the president's head blasted out. I asked him back in 2014 about the throat wound, and what he told me is that it appeared to be an entry wound. When I asked him about the size of the wound, he had brought up what I had read about what other doctors had said about it being between 3 and 5 millimeters. I asked him what he had observed. Dr. McClellan states that he arrived after the tracheotomy had been performed, but that he was recalling what he and his fellow doctors discussed about the size. He told me that he felt it was a little larger than 5 millimeters, but definitely smaller than 6.5, which was the size of the ammunition used in a 6.5 Mannlicher Carcano rifle, the Oswald rifle. I pressed further how much bigger, and he told me just a little bit bigger than 5 millimeters, but smaller than 6. Well, what about his other doctors that, were there and what they recalled? Dr. Perry, this was situated in the lower anterior 1/3 of the neck, approximately 5 millimeters in diameter. Dr. Carrico, this is probably a 4.7 millimeter wound, almost in the midline, maybe a little to the right of the midline and below the thyroid cartilage. Dr. Carrico, there was a small wound, 5 to 8 millimeters in size, located in the lower third of the neck, below the thyroid cartilage and Adam's apple. Dr. Perry, I determined only the fact that there was a wound there, roughly 5 millimeters in size or so. Dr. Jones, the wound in the throat was probably no larger than 1/4 of an inch in diameter. It's a very small, smooth wound. Nurse Hinchcliffe, it was just a little hole in the middle of his neck, about as big as the end of one of my little fingers. So next I want to show you the ballistics involving weapons and ammunition. And here's the part of my program where we will do the process of elimination. So remember, we are looking for a round of ammunition that's between 3 to 6 millimeters, they're in that size, and the weapon that could have been used. We see in this diagram that says, let's look at types of ammunition. I want you to note that the .17 HMR round that's on the far left was not available in 1963. It was not produced until 2002. So what we're looking at is a .22 long rifle and a .22 Hornet. One is a rimfire and one is a centerfire cartridge. So let's look at guns, rifles, and shotguns that we see pictured in photographs taken on November 22nd, 1963 in Dealey Plaza, Dallas, Texas. Weapons spotted and known to be in Dealey Plaza from the Dallas Police Department. Remington 870 shotguns. We see shotguns pictured here with several officers. Well, shotgun ammo does not explain the hole in President Kennedy's throat. We see rifles being carried into and out of the TSBD. How about the Remington Model 8? In the photographs just shown, we see Captain Fritz and Detective Boyd carrying their Remington Model 8 rifles in and out of the TSBD. Well, that round of ammunition is chambered in .25, .30, .32, .35, and .300 Savage. They all range from 6.54 millimeters all the way up to 9.1 millimeters. So, 6.5, 7.8, 8.2, and 9.1 is too big for the throat wound, so let's rule it out. How about handguns? Well, Sergeant Jerry Hill carried a .38 Colt Police Positive, Captain Will Fritz a .38 Colt Army Special, Detective Paul Bentley carried a Model 10 and Model 15 Smith & Wesson .38. Well, .38 special rounds are 9.1 millimeters. Dallas Police Motorcycle Officer Bobby Hargis carried a .45 ACP. Well, that diameter is 11.5. And let us not forget about all the other handguns carried by all the other officers. So 9.1, 11.5 is too big for the throat wound, so we're going to rule those out. How about the Sheriff's Department? Sheriff Bill Decker also carried a Colt Model 1917 Army .45 ACP, which has the same size as the other .45 ACP from Bobby Hargis. It's 11.5. He was riding in the lead motorcade car. I don't think he turned around and shot at President Kennedy. So it's too big for the throat wound. We're going to rule it out. How about the Secret Service? Well, we see Secret Service Agent George Hickey riding in the Queen Mary in the follow-up. He's got an AR-15 rifle. The Colt Armalite AR-15, Model 1 with a 20-round magazine, a .222 Remington, 5.7 millimeters. It fits the throat wound. But the AR-15 wasn't raised up until after the throat shot, and the car, gun, and agent was behind JFK the whole time in the motorcade. So I don't think he jumped out of the follow-up car, ran up, shot at the president, and then jumped back in. It was not a Chinese fire drill. So let's rule that out. Okay, key piece of information that several researchers have either not known or did not fully research is the .223 Remington round that was spoken and written about was not even produced until 1964. No, the Secret Service did not have it in 1963. So possibly the round that would have been loaded in the AR-15 that Secret Service agent George Hickey had in his weapon that day was a .222 Remington. Well, why the hell do I talk about that? Well, just to be thorough, I've included the ballistics of both cartridges of ammo here in this presentation. I feel that if you're going to be putting out information, you should at least make sure you have a round that was available the year that JFK was killed. They are both 5.7 millimeter in the .222 and the .223. Well, there's our boy Lee Harvey Oswald. Let's talk about him. Here we see the backyard photograph. Obviously, he's holding in the picture he is shown he's holding a rifle and a pistol on his hip. In the Klein Sporting Goods ad, you could buy this rifle for $12.88 or $19.95 with the scope. That's a hell of a deal. 6.5 millimeter Carcano. Here we see a picture of it in evidence. Well, guess what? 6.5 millimeter, but the actual diameter bullet size is 6.80, not 6.5. Here's the next clip that we're going to show, and it's called What the Hell Did He Say? In the following clip from the DVD JFK, The Story Behind the Story, we will hear Dallas Police Inspector Jay Sawyer talk about what they found on the fifth floor, and not the sixth floor. Was he confused, or was there a shooter on a different floor in the TSBD, or was this fake news?
Sound.
Yeah, can I have your name
J.H. Sawyer,
and your position?
Inspector, please.
What is the story here now? This is apparently the building that the assassin shot from.
This is the building that the witnesses said they had seen a man up there, and some with a rifle. And also we found some empty rifle shells on the fifth floor.
So he would have been directly above us.
Directly above us. Indications were that he had been there for some time.
Well, have the police department taken any precautions against such an incident?
We thought we had taken all of the precautions that were necessary. But this particular building was not covered, as were a lot of other buildings.
So as it stands now, there is a suspect. There were witnesses.
There are witnesses who saw the man.
What did they see as far as the president and the governor?
Well, several of the witnesses saw him slump over.
The president?
Yes.
And the governor?
And the governor, yes.
You also understand a Secret Service man was in.
This I do not know. I haven't received that information.
How many policemen are there in the city of Dallas?
We have approximately 1,300.
I would assume they're all out right now.
Okay. So 6.80 millimeters is too big for the throat wound from Oswald's rifle. So let's rule it out. Well, how about his revolver? Well, it was 9.1 millimeters, 38 special. It's too big for the throat wound, plus Oswald had to pick it up from his boarding house after he left the TSBD. So it wasn't actually in Dealey Plaza at the time of the throat shot, so we're going to rule it out. Well, how about Jack Ruby? On November 24th, 1963, Ruby shoots Oswald. He's carrying a .38 caliber Colt Cobra that's a .38 special, 9.1 millimeters. It is too big for the throat wound. Let me go back. Newly released documents show that Ruby was in Dealey Plaza at the corner of the Postal Annex building across the TSBD during the assassination, according to informant Bob Vanderslice. But 9.1 is too big, so we know that he didn't shoot the throat shot, at least with that revolver. Okay, now that that's all cleared up, let's move on. Let us discuss other weapons that we have reports of either being around Dealey Plaza or reported to be seen around or that has been written about in the research documents and community. Let's talk about a report of 2 different rifles found on the 6th floor of the TSBD. Time between these announcements in the next slide is 55 minutes. NBC affiliate Tom Whalen reports that the rifle goes from a .30-30 to a British .303.
A short time later, Dallas sheriff's officers took a young man into custody. It's believed that they also took a rifle at the same time, described as a .30-30 rifle, which was supposedly found near the scene, although this has not been confirmed.
We returned to station WBAP-TV in Fort Worth and newsman Tom Whalen.
Here's an additional report on what you heard NBC correspondent Bob Abernathy describe a few minutes ago, the building in which the sniper had hidden. It's the Texas School Depository at the intersection of Elm and Houston Street in Dallas. Dallas Crime Laboratory Lieutenant J.C. Day went to the building a short time after the shooting took place, and he walked out with a British .303 rifle. The rifle has a telescopic sight. Now, the rifle was found on the 6th floor of the building near a corner window. Also, police searching that area found 3 empty .303 cartridge cases, also scraps of chicken, as if a person could have been there for some time. There were boxes of books, textbooks, and other school materials stacked up all around on 3 sides of a sniper's nest, as if he had been there for some time. There was a gun rest made of papers near the open window that commanded the site from which the sniper, by which the presidential motorcade passed when the president and Governor Connally was shot. As we said before, the sniper's nest has been found, and police have recovered a British .303 rifle with a telescopic sight. This is Tom Whalen reporting from Texas for NBC from WBAP TV.
So, was this fake news? Now, these next images are of a .30-30 rifle. These are not the exact weapons that they were reported on, because we don't have pictures of a .30-30 found on that particular type of weapon. It was never entered into any evidence. But a .30-30 rifle, 7.8 millimeters, still too big for the throat wound. We're going to rule it out. How about the .303 rifle that was talked about? It's 7.92. We don't have a picture of the exact .303 that Whalen reported on, because there was never one entered into any evidence. So 7.92, we're going to rule that out. Extra tidbit of info, Buell Wesley Frazier owned a .303 British Enfield rifle. After reports of the .303 on TV, DPD went looking for Mr. Frazier. The rifle was not the only reason he was wanted for questioning, also his connection to Lee Harvey Oswald, and he too worked at TSBD and drove Oswald to work. In this supplemental offense report, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's from Rose and Stovall. This is basically just stating the fact that they caught up with him, went and looked at his rifle and his box of ammunition, and then released him. Now, I remember recording Buell in lecture, and the way he was treated at the Dallas Police Department, and the fact that he worked at the TSBD, he felt, and I think so too, that if they couldn't have gotten Oswald, they could have pinned it on him. So, how about two guns in the TSBD prior to November the 22nd, 1963? Roy Truly's later testimony to the Warren Commission, Mr. Ball, he's asking this question: do you recall any time that you saw any guns in the TSBD, or Texas School Depository Building? Mr. Truly, yes, I did, on November 20th, 1963. Mr. Truly, who they belonged to? They belonged to Mr. Warren Castor. There's a rifle to go deer hunting with, and a .20-22 rifle. Just 22. How about the mysterious .38 in the brown paper bag? Well, here's another weapon we need to talk about. There was a .38 snub-nose revolver found in a brown paper bag, lunch sack. .38 snub-nose revolver, serial number 893265. There have been reports of it being found in front of the TSBD, grassy knoll at the corner of Ross and Lamar Street. Have gun will travel. Reports of a blonde-haired woman dropping it, found by Willie Flatt and turned into Dallas robbery homicide office by DPD Patrolman J. Raz. The FBI started an investigation on 11/30/63. Well, where did that investigation lead to? Where's the revolver at now? It is clouded mystery. We don't have a definitive answer. In the next two slides, it's basically just a Google map section, and it looks like it takes about 6 minutes to walk, if you have legs. How about the 7.65 German Mauser? Well, just so we know, 7.94 millimeters is the size of the cartridge, or the round of ammunition, actually. Not the cartridge, but the bullet. Okay, brief history about this rifle. This came from Jim Garrison's On the Trail of the Assassins, page 113 to 115. Officer Seymour Weitzman, part of the Dallas Police search team, later described the discovery of the rifle on the afternoon of November the 22nd. He stated that it had been so well hidden under boxes of books that the officers stumbled over it many times before they found it. Officer Weitzman, who had an engineering degree and also operated a sporting goods store, was recognized as an authority on weapons. Okay. Consequently, Dallas Homicide Chief Will Fritz, who was on the scene, asked him the make of the rifle. Weitzman identified it as a 7.65 Mauser, a highly accurate German-made weapon. Deputy Sheriff Roger Craig was also there and later recalled the word Mauser inscribed in the metal of the gun. And Deputy Sheriff Eugene Boone executed a sworn affidavit in which he described the rifle as a Mauser. As late as midnight, November the 22nd, Dallas District Attorney Henry Wade told the media that the weapon found was a Mauser. Guess what? Mauser is not stamped in the barrel of Oswald's rifle. So 7.94 is too big for the throat wound. We're going to rule it out. How about James Files? James Files' claim is this. His real name is James Sutton. He was 21 years old at the time of 11/22/63. He claims he was a shooter on the grassy knoll, bit the bullet case and set it on the fence. That was his trademark. He fired the fatal round into JFK's head, worked with Charles Nicoletti and Johnny Rosselli, met up with Lee Harvey Oswald, and spent time with him in Dallas prior to the assassination. What they do, we don't know. There is more to this story and his claims that I will not go into today, but if you wish, you can look him up on the internet and judge for yourself. Take him with a grain of salt. Well, he claims he was shooting a Remington XP-100. Well, it's a .221 Remington Fireball, 5.7 millimeters. It is a ballistic tip bullet, but 5.7 millimeters fits a throat wound, but James Files said he only shot Kennedy in the head and not the throat, so I'm going to rule him out. Also because I think he's a liar. Finally, we've come to my theory of what type of weapon could have been used. Okay, art imitating life. Let us see if Hollywood in one of its timeless films could point to a weapon that could have been used. And I'm also going to show you a TV show that came out about 2 years ago that show the type of weapon that I'm talking about. Bond, James Bond, From Russia with Love. And I'm not going to show all the video clips because of time, but where did he get those wonderful toys? Well, in the movie, they always gave James Bond, the spy, all kinds of, different kinds of weapons and techie gadgets and, all that good stuff. Well, Q is the guy that always gave him the tech gadgets, the weapons. Well, I'm not going to play the video clip right now, but if you go back and watch the movie, Q actually states that the AR-7, which is the rifle they're giving him, is a .25 caliber. They got this wrong. It was actually chambered for a .22 long rifle caliber bullet. So, From Russia with Love, it was released October 10th and 11th in 1963, so before the Kennedy assassination in London and United Kingdom. JFK was assassinated on 11/22/63 and was released in the United States April 8th, 1964. If this weapon could have been used, and the guy that did it, if they didn't just bump him off, he could have been sitting there in the theater and go, hell, that little weapon looks familiar. What was the reason for it in the movie? An assassination. Anybody watch The Umbrella Academy on Netflix? Well, season 2 dealt with the Umbrella Man, JFK. This was 4 years after I first spoke about my research and gave my first presentation in public. So I didn't steal it from Netflix. I'm not saying they stole it from me either. In these next few photographs, we see the character by the name of Number 5 using this weapon to blow up the, the Hindenburg. Uses for assassinations. We see here he's behind the picket fence shooting. Pulling the weapon out of a briefcase, just like James Bond did, and assemble the rifle and take his shot. Well, so we're talking about the AR-5 and the AR-7. Okay, the Armalite AR-5 and the AR-5 number 2. Now, why is there two different AR-5s? Because the AR-5 was procured by United States Air Force. I just had a brain lock. Curtis LeMay. The AR-5, when they got it, it didn't fire the way that, it wasn't reliable. So they went back to the drawing board and they came up with the AR-5 number 2. They're basically the exact same gun. The only thing you really see different is the sight. So it was produced and put into use in 1956 by the United States Air Force. It was released for civilian use in 1959. both before JFK was killed. The weight of this gun is only 2.5 pounds. It's a total of 42 inches in length. And guess what? It breaks down. This is the action. This is where you would put your magazine in, where your bullets would eject out. There's a picture of the magazine. The magazine or the clip was known as the Ronson or Zippo magazine clip because it was about the size of that. It had a 5-round capacity. Let's talk about this bullet for a minute, this cartridge. It's a .22 Hornet. It is 2.3 times the muzzle velocity and 7 times the energy of the common .22 long rifle. So I want you to keep that in mind because I'm going to show you a video later about what these kind of rounds can do. And if you'll notice at the very tip, that is actually a ballistic tip that can be removed, and it's a hollow point underneath that. But as long as the ballistic tip is intact and not removed, it goes through the air like a missile, just like it'll go through a body like a missile. It will create a perfect round hole, not jagged, perfectly round. It'll go through a windshield perfectly round without being stripped away like other lead-jacketed full metal jacket bullets. Well, here's a size comparison. On the left, in the middle is the .22 long rifle Magnum. But if we see on the left, and this is the picture on the right, but on the left is a .22 standard long rifle. It's a hollow point. The one next to it's a lead tip. The Magnum is third one from the left, and the one on the right is a .22 Hornet, the ballistic bullet. These are what they call soft point cartridges. The top of the box here says, under no circumstances is the ammunition to be used for offensive or defensive measures against enemy personnel. This ammunition is provided for use with your emergency survival rifle for the killing of game for food under emergency survival conditions only. Why was that? Because of the Hague Convention. This weapon was not supposed to be used against another human being. One of the worst rounds to be possibly shot with, one of the most dangerous, is a .22. .22 enters your body. It ricochets, it tears through bone, tendon. It sometimes doesn't actually leave your body. Well, the specifications. The .22 Hornet is 5.7 millimeters. And just for a second, look at the ballistic performance. On a 35 grain VMAX, that summit travels 3,060 feet per second with 728 foot-pounds of energy, while the 55 grain round is 2,652 feet per second with 859 foot-pounds. You think 859 foot-pounds or even down to 728 will enter a windshield? Yep, because I'm going to show it to you. So it fits a throat wound, so let's rule it in. Let's talk about that Armalite AR-7. It was produced and used, put into use in 1959 to present. They still make it. You can get them today. Back in the first Armalite AR-7, you had a 5-round capacity. It weighed 2.49 pounds, and it was only a length of 35 inches. And yes, it broke down too. Here's a picture of the .22 long rifle. Ballistic size, ballistic information, 5.7 millimeters. From a 40 grain, you've got 1,200 feet per second, 104 foot-pounds. Think 104 foot-pounds will go through a windshield? Yep. 30 grains, 1,640 feet per second, 191 foot-pounds. So does it fit the throat wound? Yes, it does. We're going to rule it in. Here's the rifle that's available today. It's about a pound heavier because the stock is not wood. It's a synthetic polymer, plastic. It is 35 inches. It's also 8-round capacity instead of a 5. Here we see it broke down. Everything you see on the screen, minus the butt cap and the stock, the action, the 2 clips or magazines, and the barrel fits all inside. And there's what it looks like when it's inside. This next slide will show you the video I spoke about. It's a video of the Henry Survival AR-7 being assembled. Oh, this is the one that I did. Now, you saw in the video a while ago with James Bond, Sean Connery putting the rifle together. Well, for demonstration purposes, we actually have the AR-7 Henry Survival rifle here, and I'm going to put this together for you. You pull off the butt cap. Everything is inside the stock. You have 2 magazines. You have your barrel. You have your action. You take the action, you slide it in. There's a turn screw. Tighten the turn screw up. Take your barrel, insert it into your action. It's got a spin collar lock. Take your magazine, insert magazine. This is your rifle. It's extremely light. I'm holding this with just 2 fingers and my thumb to steady it. Do you think this rifle could have been used? Anybody could have walked into Dealey Plaza with this underneath their coat, rain jacket, briefcase, whatever. Pull it out, assemble it just as fast and easy as I did, if not quicker, and take their shot. Now, last time I spoke here, I actually brought it with me, and I walked up on stage and it was underneath my jacket, and nobody even knew I had it with me. So it could have been actually carried into Dealey Plaza. They were wearing raincoats that day. They were wearing suits. So could somebody have walked in with it? Yep. I walked right in here. I had permission, but I walked right in here, walked up on stage, and I remember back when Ed and Larry were here, pulled it right out, and I know Larry's expression was, holy shit. All right, let's go back to USB video, or microphone, sorry. So the Henry the Henry AR-7. Both of these could have been used. AR-5-1, AR-5-2, or the AR-7. I lean towards AR-5-1 or 2. I think 2 would be better. I lean towards that because the .22 Hornet is a more powerful round. Okay, so why? Well, it's very little recoil. Obviously, it's easy to conceal. It's extremely accurate to about 100 meters, about 300 feet. For such a small caliber, it can cause quite a lot of damage. And what did the ear witnesses say? Oh yeah, it's quiet. It sounds like a firecracker. This does not sound like a firecracker. Hell, it's even louder than an M80. Now let's look at the possible shooting locations and trajectories for a moment. First off, throat shot. It's a frontal shot. Now this is an aerial photo, and I want you to pay close attention to the red rectangle because it represents where the presidential limousine was at the time of the shot to President Kennedy's throat. Now, right there, it is 421.9 feet above sea level. 421.9. Here's JFK's viewpoint. If he was sitting in it, if he was sitting in his car, this is what he would have seen at that spot. So he can see the south knoll, north knoll is over to his side, and the bridge is right in front. How about a south knoll shooter? Well, a good friend of mine and of the research community, Sherry Feaster, wrote a book called Enemy of the Truth. I think she was definitely on the right track, and I think a lot of her stuff was correct, but she wrote in a 15.0 degree cone, as she called it, a cone, a throat shot trajectory. Okay, if the shot came from the south grassy knoll, this would explain the hole in the window and the shot to JFK's throat. Now, saying that, I would like to add that Sherry's research and book are excellent source material, but I think that the shooter for the throat shot was close, but not from the south knoll. Here's a sniper's viewpoint from the south knoll. Now, the black vehicle behind the little white Kia Soul there is about 1 car length ahead of where JFK's limousine would have been at the throat shot, because it was actually right in here. Maybe that might be a car and a half length. Okay, the car is coming at an angle, but you're also shooting sideways. And you're going to hit him almost dead center of the throat. I don't like that trajectory. If I was taking that shot, I sure as hell wouldn't stand there. I wouldn't aim for that. Here's another view of the sniper viewpoint from the south knoll. This is at 421.9 feet above sea level. And what I say a while ago, where the limousine was at? 421.9 feet. From the top of the south knoll, which goes right around where the bridge is, and it's pretty flat right there. You might be maybe 1 foot off in elevation. That's a straight-on trajectory. That's a 0-degree drop from where the rifle could be at and where the limousine was at. So where do I put the shooter at? I put him at the bridge. Look at the bridge. Now, most of the time that when we see this photograph printed, the car here on the left, if you look at the right tail light, that photo is usually cropped almost in half, or you don't see these two tail lights. It is cut from here and straight up. Why? Does anybody see anything on the left side over here? Over? I sure as hell do. Yep, tag's in there. This photograph was taken by Tom Dillard. This has got a little bit of the grain cleaned up now. Starting to see something? How about now? We call this a tactical shooting position. In the Frank Cancelleri photo, this was taken after the assassination. Do we see anything covered in that spot? Nope. There is a picture that's shown that's Cancelleri that shows a guy walking on the south knoll carrying a rifle. Do you know how far it is to come from this spot to right here and walk down the tree line? Pretty easy. That's called take your shot and get the hell out of Dodge. So, blow up of that. We don't see anything. This is after the assassination. This is just right after. It's not there. This is a photograph that me and Brian took when we went down to see Gary about maybe 2 to 3 years ago. See anything in that spot now? Well, let's take another look. Here's a reconstruction. There's a Dillard photo. There's me. I'm standing above. Hi, everybody. Look at my shooting position. If I had a rifle that day, that's what we would have seen. That's what the shooter would have done in that spot. That's what they would have looked like on the opposite side of what we see in the Dillard photograph. This walkway, first off, this part here was not there in '63, that fence line and these concrete pillars. But you walk back right here and you're at the South Knoll, and you're at the same level. Again, 421.9 feet above sea level. Same height as the JFK limo. Where's everybody looking? I call this hiding in plain sight. All these people up here on the top, you can follow the white lines where they're looking at. Even the people that are down here, where are they looking at? Are they looking here, follow the yellow line? Hell no, nobody's looking at him. They're all paying attention to what's going on Elm Street, and the car coming, and the president in a motorcade getting shot to death. I don't think that's what they planned on seeing that day, at least some of them. Let's take a look from the shooter's perspective. This is looking over the railing. Just so happens I caught a car just about another car length ahead where the limousine would have been. Here's me in the crouched position. Now, I would sure as hell take this shot straight through the windshield instead of going from the south null. Now, I'm not saying that there couldn't have been a headshot from the south null. Absolutely. But you can make a headshot from right here, too. Here's another view of it. What if he had a scope? Perfect line. You can see right into the car. So, there's no sound of this, but just look. He's shooting a .22 through a windshield. Is that an AR-5, AR-7? No, it's a Smith & Wesson. It still shoots a .22. Goes straight through. Does it deflect? Nope. Guess where the bullet lands? In the headrest. I've had detractors that state, well, if you shoot a .22 through a windshield, it's just going to bounce off. It's going to ricochet. Obviously, it can go through. There's the headrest. Goes straight in. Even trajectory, even with a bullet drop, and bullets do drop when you fire them. I think what probably happened was the shooter was actually aiming over the support, which, by the way, was 60 inches above ground level, from street level. The hole in the windshield was 50 inches. If he aimed just a few inches off, 10-inch drop, yep. Went through, instead of going over the top, which would have been a viewpoint to hit him in the head, do I think that the shooter actually goes, hey, you know what, my first shot's going to be the throat? No, you're going to aim for your target, hit him right in the head. Instead, it hits him in the throat. I don't think the shooter that day was aiming for the throat. I think he was aiming for the head, but he didn't adjust correctly for the bullet drop and for the car coming at him. So extra tidbits to ponder. Well, here's an extra tidbit. Do you know who had a government-issued AR-5 that was issued to him and he did not return it when his service ended? The same guy that procured the weapon for the United States Air Force. There's our buddy, General Curtis LeMay. How do we know it's Curtis LeMay's weapon? His tag is riveted to the gun. This is the AR-5, the one. The one has the sight like this, okay? In the AR-2, the sight is right above. It doesn't come over and angle over at a right angle. It goes straight up above. Not like what these are. This is the only difference between the AR-5 and the AR-5.2. It's where the hell they put the sight. That's really the only difference. Let's talk about my buddy S.T. Patrick, his magazine Garrison. And I suggest if anybody has not read it or picked up the newest issue, issue 9, please do so. Support the man. He's doing great work. Okay. I want to read this real quick. I'm just about done. I got 2 slides. Presidential motorcade in Springfield. Now I got to put my damn glasses on. I'm getting old. In Springfield, Illinois, on October 19th, the presidential motorcade had passed a point in a downtown area and was due to return within about 30 minutes. A few minutes after the motorcade passed, an employee of the Illinois Department of Public Safety saw a rifle barrel with a telescopic sight protruding from a second-story window. The local police took it into custody and delivered to special agents of the Secret Service Thomas William Stone, age 20, and his brother-in-law, William Francis Cisco, age 16. A .22 caliber semi-automatic rifle and a full box of .22 long rifle ammunition was seized. Stone and Cisco admitted pointing the gun out the window on the parade route. However, they claimed that they had merely been testing the power of the telescopic sight to determine if it would be worthwhile to remove it in order to get a better look at the president when the motorcade returned. and there was no evidence to the contrary, and neither of the men had any previous record. Prosecution was declined. They're aiming a gun at the President of the United States. What kind of bullshit is that? But hey, it sounds plausible, right? Did it say that they were having a .22 hunting rifle, .22, AR-5, AR-7? No, just says 22. Not a whole lot of good information there. Just here's some information for you. Funny part about it was this was given to the Office of the President, and it was on another piece of paper talking about a watch thief. So remember, this is just a theory. I put this together because, number one, I think there's validity to it. Number two, I want you guys to think about going back, looking at the information, the research material, the exhibits, all the stuff that we've got out there, go back to square one and start over again. I know it's been 59 years. Ideas change. Documents come out and tell us new things that we thought we knew the answer to. Guess what? We're still trying to get answers. We're getting some answers. We're piecing the puzzle together, but we're not done yet. And unfortunately, I'm going to be 48 years old this year. My kids, I passed the information on to them and said, you know what, guys? I'll probably be dead before this information actually comes out and we have a definitive answer other than the Warren Commission and the House Select Committee on Assassinations. But maybe they'll take it over. Maybe the students here at Olney, Illinois College, OCC, will take over. They've got great teachers like David Denton. Casey Quinlan was a teacher. I've taught just as a guest speaker at colleges, junior highs, high schools, hell, even elementary schools. If I get a place where I can talk to kids, I'll go and talk to them. Why? Because this is important. If you can't understand what happened in the turbulent 1960s, you sure as hell cannot understand what's going on today. Unfortunately, the kids of this generation, they're being dumbed down. They're not being taught history. You need to be worried about what's going on social media. You need to be worried about what's going on with, YouTube. Well, there's great things on YouTube, but we've got them on TikTok. We've got them on other social media platforms. I'm not throwing anything against those platforms, but how about let's get the kids to actually get books, go out there and read, research. We used to take kids down to Dallas, Texas, take them to the scene of the crime. First time I went, I was on one of those buses back in 1991. When I first started this, I sure as hell wasn't born in '63. I didn't come along until ’74. But it took Casey Quinlan to get me actually to pull my head out of my ass, pay attention to what he was saying and what was going on around me, so that way I would start actually watching the news instead of complaining that my parents had it on and I couldn't watch cartoons. So the next step we've got to do, we've got to take it to the younger generation. We've got to get them involved. So the best place for information, a lot of places on the internet. One of those being ProjectJFK.com. We're trying to put the information out there. We're trying to be kind of I don't want to say a Walmart, but a one-stop shop where that way you can come and get information. You can go on the affiliated website page. You can find other websites that we link to. So with that, I want to thank you guys for your time today. For the people that are on Zoom that took the time and the money to join us, I want to thank you guys for having us and for having me. Thank you.
Questions for David?
Go ahead, Larry.
That demo that you did, the nebula that's created around the bullet hole.
Well, first, I didn't actually. You're talking about the video I showed from YouTube and the the page from Full Mag. That's their channel. I didn't actually do the video, but you're talking about as far as what it looks like around there. We also have to think about the fact, yeah, the spider web circle part, the impact. You did see how close he was to that car, right? Okay, so we're talking a round that's a .22, which is I put it out there for demonstration of saying the bullet can go through the windshield. Now, a .22 is either it's a full metal jacket. It's got a lead core to it, just like the .22 Hornet does. The bullet that looked like that came out of there looked like a lead tip bullet. It's going to smash, compress. It's going to cause, you know, the spider web that's around that.
Larger the closer you are.
Yeah. So if you're farther away, I mean, and not just that, but you've held a bullet in your hand. I gave you one to take home, and that was I couldn't wait to find out how the hell they treated you on the airplane going back to Florida. You're carrying ammunition, but you're not carrying the rifle. Even you saw the bullet. It's literally just a pinpoint. I mean, it comes into a pinpoint, that ballistic tip bullet. It's going to pierce a windshield instead of, you know, hitting and impacting like this, you know, and mushrooming. It's going to go in and keep on going.
And how does it behave aerodynamically versus one that is sort of rounded, more rounded than that? How's that going to compare?
Okay, so Larry asked, how's it going to compare from a rounded tip bullet to like a ballistic tip? Well, guess what? The 6.5 Carcano came in a blunt nose bullet. It also came in a military style round. A bullet is still going to do its job. It's going to either hit its target, it's going to kill or maim or cause a hole to go into something. But when it comes to a round tip bullet, it's going to behave more like tumble, yaw, which is what they call it when the bullet is going through the air. When it makes its impact, it can make a hole that's a little bit bigger, not perfectly round. You get a bullet like the 22 long rifle, or I'm sorry, the 22 Hornet, a ballistic tip bullet. It's going to slice through the air, windshield, tissue, going through a necktie, a dress shirt into Kennedy's throat, and cause a perfect round wound. Yeah, it'll do that. Now, if he would have got hit with a 22 long rifle round, I don't think we would have had as what the doctor stated, a perfect round hole that they witnessed. Now, of course, the guys at Bethesda, they didn't get a chance to see a perfect round hole because of the tracheotomy that, you know, Perry had cut into. I think the reason why we see that jagged wound that's in President Kennedy's throat, Crenshaw stated that Perry did not cause a gash. I mean, it's not a hole, it's a gash. He didn't cause that wound. But he gets shot in the throat, bullet fragments. Do I say the 22 can't fragment? No, it can fragment, absolutely. So can a 22 long rifle round. They didn't want to have a round of either the bullet as a whole or in fragments, so they could have just made a little bit larger cut and ripped the skin so it looked like it was an exit wound instead of an entry, and go on a fishing expedition and get the damn bullet out. Whether they did it by hand or whether they did it by hemosteps, not hemosteps, what the hell do they call them? Basically the lawn pliers. I can't think at the moment. I've only had about 8 hours of sleep this whole weekend. So I hope that answers your question, Larry.
Larry, around those bullets has more mass. The closer you are, the bigger the hole's going to be. But it's still going to punch a hole versus...
Hold on just a second with your comment. Hold on. I'm sorry, what was that, Brian?
I said around those bullets has more mass to it, so it's going to make a bigger hole the closer you are. But a 22 Hornet with the ballistic tip is going to pierce through without causing a whole lot of collateral damage. It's still going to punch through.
Yeah, I think that he was probably aiming for the head. I said, I think that what you just described, and for you people in the audience that maybe didn't hear him, I can hear him in my ear. He was speaking of aiming over the windshield, but below the crossbar, but above the windshield and the visors, and aim at the head. Okay. Yeah.
So I think both front shots came from the bridge, and I think one is 313 and one is at 318. And that the shot that hit him in the throat, I don't believe came from the bridge, because I put that on the
Admit David Towery in the room. Click on the blue box.
Okay, so I think that's somewhere on the south. And I think that if you make the measurements, if you count, people go one way. If you go back from the south node through the windshield and through Kennedy's throat, you've got the 15 degrees, in that case, left to right, and about 3 degrees downward. Which matches the trajectory between the throat hole and the right scapular or medial back. So I'm thinking, and I've always thought this for a long time, is that the throat bone exits through the back. And there's a tear in the upholstery that went in the upholstery. Somebody found approximately 22 gauge sight, 22 caliber sight bullet in the back seat at some point. It disappeared. So I don't know. I think the throat one was thrown through. I guess I would say the two things. I think the two frontal head wounds that were from the overpass from a semi-automatic weapon, and that the throat wound was a separate, probably suppressed. Maybe your rifle would be quiet enough. You have to have everything synchronized, so the bridge shots were synchronized with the shot from the grassy knoll. Shot from the throat was synchronized with the shot from the sixth floor. So everything in its synchronization and suppression, I think, kind of key words in the Kennedy assassination in terms of the shooting. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Well, I appreciate the comments, and I also appreciate the research that you've done. Thank you.
Does the AR-5 take a silencer?
Well, in the movie, and of course we're going with Hollywood here. I know gunsmiths can put a silencer on damn near any type of barrel that's out there, but we see Bond put a silencer, as suppressor on the AR-7, so I'm pretty sure you could probably do it on the AR-5 as well. Effect velocity. Well, actually, you're adding, depending on how wide or how long the suppressor is. The longer the barrel, the more straight, the more precise that you're going to get that round to come out. I mean, if you shot a round with you'd say a handgun compared to a rifle, difference of barrel lengths, the longer the barrel, the straighter you're going to have a shot. So by putting a suppressor on, I wouldn't think that that would change the dynamics of how it comes out of the gun at all. I think it would actually probably help